Hey, everybody. Coming up on today's podcast, we're talking about the failing EV charging infrastructure in the U.S. and other parts of the world. We're going to question why the market for EVs in the U.S. is potentially collapsing. Also, why Elon Musk's word-of-mouth marketing may not be working anymore. Perhaps it could be contributing to Tesla's new car registrations declining a little bit. We're going to talk about the BMW shift to hydrogen fuel cell EVs versus battery electric vehicles. We're going to talk about why the heck the millennials are not buying automobiles anymore. And the great DeLorean showdown continues. All of that right after this. Hey, everybody. Welcome into the Counter Show podcast. And if you don't know who we are Parts Counter Gurus, or if you're into acronyms, we're PCG. This podcast and our YouTube channel covers the automotive industry. We bring you the latest news, the trends, product reviews, etc. We cover EVs, camping, off-roading, all that crap, man. All that good stuff. But subscribe. Okay, all right. Now, without further ado, I would like to say I am profoundly grateful to be able to do this and to be doing it with that guy right over there. Everybody, say hello, Keith.
But let me just quote the late, great Colonel Sanders, who said, "I'm too drunk to taste this chicken."
Nice.
One of the best lines, but
nicely done, man. Somebody's been thinking about this show for more than 5 minutes ago, and
yeah.
Hey,
I'm trying to up my game, man.
Nicely done. So. Hey, everybody. Welcome back. I've got 3 things that I want to.
Okay.
Number one, a friend of the show, a friend of ours, a listener of the show, a fan of the show, a helper and supporter of our business endeavor, guy by the name of Chuck, is recovering from a skiing accident. And so he's always given us words of encouragement. He's always trying to help us out. I wanted to return the favor. Chuck, hey, actually, at the end of this, I'm going to make you listen to the whole thing. Got a special message for you, but for now, just get off your ass. And also Dennis,
I love it,
who had a fall not skiing, but is in rehab as we speak. Might be out of rehab by the time this comes out. Either way, keep doing your exercises and get back on your feet. If you guys, Dennis did a whole bunch of voice drops because he has a professional a career in the radio industry. He's a professional.
Worked alongside the great Pat O'Day at one point in his life career.
So speedy recovery to Dennis, and also thanks to Racelon, who did our show music that I abruptly cut off.
Wow, man.
But nonetheless, they're great, and if you want to check them out, Google Racelon, RHASALON, and you can hear more. You can hear album music.
Oh, absolutely, album music, good stuff. They've got some new stuff that's hanging out there right now. If you want to really go check them out, they're fantastic. They're getting better and better. I told Leonardo, man, the other day that his voice is like fine wine. It gets better with age, man. He really is. He's up in his game. Those guys are great. Anyway, cheers to
Some
you
guys can't do that. You know, it's they're barely hitting
like
it.
Vince Neil.
Yeah. So,
we've got a great supporting cast, don't we?
It's
that's why I said what I said. We are both very grateful to have the opportunity to do this, but we couldn't do it with others behind us and supporting us. And I think you mentioned some key figures in our success of this show.
You can call it a career. That's fine.
Yeah, I'm hoping to at some point, man. So, and by the way, guys, make sure you're subscribed to our YouTube channel. Just go to youtube.com/Parts Counter Gurus and click that like button on this or subscribe for greater things to come.
Is there a barcode on that shirt somewhere?
There's not. I should get one with a barcode on it.
I can make you some. Yeah. You want to put a sticker on it?
Yeah,
right?
For the shows. Yeah. Coming to which by the way, this is important to mention, Keith, that our schedule, we hope, gets heavier and heavier on the road. That is. So, currently we're looking into bringing you guys some live coverage from some of the overlanding shows that are across this country. Overland Expo is probably the largest one. They have one in the mountain area, I think it's Loveland, Colorado.
It's a Denver area.
Yeah, Denver area. And then, there's the Pacific Northwest, which is in Oregon. Then there's in the east, which is in Virginia, I believe. So just go to overlandexpo.com and you'll see those locations. But currently we're working with some brand partners to potentially go out and visit them and bring you guys some live action and interviews from one of those shows this year. So we'll see what happens. Anyway, yeah. So, but hey, you know what? I'm thinking of this, right? I'm just
this is the time in this show where those thoughts kind of tend to surface.
Yeah,
so
it's kind of surface, right? So we need to make mention too that we have some great deals for you guys with some of our brand partners. So if you go to our website, which is partscounterguru.com, and click on, was it show specials? Is what it is, or brand partners, or one of those. Yeah. So anyway, when you go there and click that, we've got. If you click those links, that helps us out if you go shopping. But most importantly, if you look at some of those links, there are actual promotional codes that are exclusive to us and to our listeners.
Meaning you get a discount,
use those codes,
right? On a lot of cases on anything they sell, not just a particular item. It is show specials, by the way. You were correct. Absolutely. And there's an Amazon link too, because everybody's getting their tax returns and they want to go buy tchotchkes on Amazon too.
Exactly.
How many drunk Amazon purchases do you think? But like a lot of that probably gets returned, right?
Probably.
Wouldn't it be funny if Amazon added a return code reason that said like,
drunk?
I was just drunk.
Yeah. Ordered by my puppy.
Man, I gotta quit. I gotta quit with the. Well, that's possible too now with all the voice activated.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
I gotta quit throwing out ideas that aren't in some way, shape, or form protected that we don't release first.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man. No doubt, man. No doubt. I'm just cracking myself up here. So anyway, Star Trek Discovery, where are you at in that?
I'm caught up.
Okay, great. So you saw the chair?
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. Okay. All right.
Time bug,
dude. I'm telling you, man, that was killer. That was one of my favorites. And see here, what did we say in the, a few podcasts back? It had just been released, and we were starting to watch it. And you asked me how I felt about it, and I said I was a little underwhelmed. Yeah. But I went back and rewatched it, and apparently I had fallen asleep in one of those episodes, and so I rewatched that and caught myself back up. And I think that the plot line is perfect. This final season. I'm looking
the
forward
writing
to more
on
of
this
that.
Most recent one was classic TNG writing, maybe even TOS writing. It stands for the original series. And I really think that the writers in the writers' room were like, "Can we do what if there was some sort of time bug?" And somebody goes, "Well, let's just have a time bug,"
Right. Right. Yeah, it's interesting, right? But I love the way they're threading this thing together, right? Which the whole premise of the treasure hunt, so to speak, if you will, and it makes you look forward to that next week. So I've been really making myself just I will stop it at one point and go, okay, let's talk about this. What did we just see, and how does that tie into the previous episode? So I'm beginning to get a little bit smarter with how I'm ripping this thing apart as I'm watching it, to kind of grasp that whole thing. And the reason why I'm doing it is because I kind of think I want to have the answer to how it's going to end this year. You know what I mean? It's one of those things. So we shall see.
On some My wife hates that. Like, we'll get third episode into a season of 8 episodes, and I'll go, "You mean to tell you how this is going to end?" She'll be like, don't know. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah, that's right, man. So, hey, little personal story for me, and I just little something for the United States Postal Service out there. You guys freaking suck.
Okay.
Here's why. Okay. All right. The bottom line is, when I pay $10 to get a piece of mail to a location with it's a trackable piece and insured, to get to a location in 2 days, and it takes you 15, you got some questions to answer, pal. Just saying. And whoever's in charge of that, you need to clean house. Get some new leadership at the U.S. Postal Service. You suck.
We should
never underestimate your opponent. Expect the unexpected.
We should
yeah.
we should do an episode on suggestions to fix the Postal Service.
What, you mean, like going all EV? Because
it's been such a polarizing topic. Like, we've gotten a lot of comments on when we did that segment, right? That what if we just did I don't know. I'm just, thinking out loud here, but, could we solve it? CEO
that
for
actually,
a week, right? What's the solution?
I like the plot. I like that. I think that would be a great subject matter. And I am absolutely 100% certain that it might have to be a series.
Right.
That's how full and loaded that topic.
I mean,
of
is it
discussion
just
would be.
them though? I and this is kind of the question that I would pose, because interestingly enough, that I've seen this come up in other areas. I have this conversation with my wife. So I played the sound drop, and jokingly, like, the Roadhouse, like, that character in the movie Roadhouse was a stoic, and
right.
That whole philosophy I'm a huge fan of, that whole kind of way to live your life. And part of kind of the conditioning that I've gotten into is, I almost expect that I have to leave an hour or two in my day to deal with the unexpected that somebody didn't do, right? And I guess the question that I have, maybe leave us a comment, is I don't feel like it's always been that way. I feel like there's always been some element of people botching things, but the customer service aspect, I think, is we've just tolerated more. It's acceptable now. These postal guys they do it because they get away with it, because there's no consequence. I mean, I've had stuff like not show up. And like I've had hold mail. This has happened numerous times where you go out of town and you fill out the thing and you have them hold your mail, and then you pick the date that it's all supposed to be delivered, and then that day comes and there's no mail, or there's just it's not a postal holiday and they don't pick up mail, and then and I'll open a ticket and I'll ask, and basically the response that you get is we addressed this internally, it's fixed. Right? Like, they don't have to care.
No, they're the only, in that regard, they're kind of the only game in town. Yeah. So, similar situation for me. I mean, this. I live in a multi-dwelling situation.
Yep.
So we have multiple mailboxes out there. But these things have been bought and sold over the years. I'm a new owner. And so, you'll get the occasional piece of mail from the previous owner.
Yeah.
And then you put down and you write on the inside of the mailbox the names that could possibly be receiving mail here.
That's way beyond their pay grade. I still get, we've lived where we live for 15 years, and I still get previous people's stuff.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've been here for, 8 years now, man, I guess, somewhere around there. And what was weird is that we stopped getting the previous owner's mail like maybe 6 months after we moved in, and hadn't since until late last year. It was like multiples, like tax documents, and it was like crazy. And it still says on the inside of the mailbox when you open it that person is not part of the group that lives
It'd
here.
be interesting to know, like, from an insider that worked in the Postal Service, like, is it just so much red tape that, like, the carriers can't, it's just not possible to fix? Or is it just that they don't care? I honestly am curious. I don't know. I want to know.
Well, it really kind of ties in, Key, to what we're going to be talking about today, and it's called infrastructure.
Yeah.
I mean, anything that our government has their hands in, it's just absolutely a train wreck right now.
But I think it's also happening in the private sector. There's just this burden on your staff that it's like, well, what difference does it make whether I care or not? I mean, the outcome is the same for me,
I guess, and I was having a conversation yesterday with someone about the food industry. Some of these larger chains that, they all have the same menu, but yet you can go from one location to the other of a specific chain, and it would be horrible at one location. Service is terrible, and it's just, I think it's regional in a lot of cases of the quality and level of service you're going to get.
That's an interesting, and some of it's the franchise, right? Like, so
absolutely,
if you have a franchise owner and they actually own that location, they're more interested in making a bigger profit. They want it to go better. Interestingly enough, Cummins, and I don't know this to be factually true, but I've heard it from multiple people. A lot of the Cummins factory service centers in the heavy duty side, diesel engines and whatnot, used to be franchises. And I live in Nashville, and I've heard, again, this isn't verified, but Cummins apparently brought a lot of the franchises back under the corporate management. And what I do know is that the local Nashville center, like a lot of the people that I used to interface with on the service advisors, they're gone. Like they're just all one day just weren't there anymore. So it sort of smells like there was a big change, right?
Right.
But
right.
I got this yesterday. I dropped off my RV for some service, which I called a couple weeks ago and scheduled. Like that's why you call, right? It's like I need to have the generator serviced for this 1,000 hours, and I need to have I needed an oil change, and the engine brake was throwing a fault code. Anyway, I get there, and the girl that is, I guess, a service advisor. She's like, well, I don't know that we're going to be able to get to the generator service. And I was like, why? And she goes, well, unfortunately, the people doing scheduling aren't here, and we're really backed up. And I'm going, well, that's you guys. Like, I didn't say this to her, but I'm like, you kind of need to work that out with whoever's doing your scheduling and get that fixed. Like, it's not okay to just come back to me and go, tough, can't do it, right? Like, I scheduled this, right? So now you're telling me I got to drive it, 30 miles home and then take another 2 hours out of my... And so I said this, Jay. I said, well, how many hours, like, what does this job involve? And she looked at me and she goes, how many of these have you done?
Ooh.
And I'm like...
I'm like, dude,
and I'm thinking, you don't know, I may just be a co-owner of an automotive podcast where you get called out on something like that. You just better be careful. Anyway, you don't ever say that to a customer. Because the answer could be more than you.
Right.
You're not back there turning wrenches. How many have you done? Anyway, I think she's probably not incentivized to care. That's the point.
Probably not.
Right? And
Probably
that's
not. She's not the one. She's not the one out there, booking the hours.
So that's the question is, right? Like Postal Service, repair shops, whoever, right? Like, is it the point where we've just put so much burden on the infrastructure that there's just no way they can care and nobody can afford to keep up to pay them to care? I honestly don't know. I'm just trying to...
I think you asked some really great questions there, and I think that there's a lot of truth there, but I think the bigger question is I think you have to point back to when did this start happening? When did this start becoming an issue in the service industry as a whole?
Interesting. Yeah. So if we can sort of find, okay, all right. Yeah.
I mean, that for me, I think you go back to when they shut the country down, man, for COVID.
Oh,
I think we all looked at each other and said, "Hey, this will never be the same." Because you really started seeing people's attitudes then. I mean, you really started seeing who they actually were.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I was seeing people that were completely okay with just taking that check, man, and not working, and working around the system not to go back to work to get another check.
I mean,
the people I would have never imagined that would have done that.
Let's be clear. It is work to level up in Fortnite. It doesn't level itself up,
It's not easy. You got to be a very skilled individual. That's right, man. So So anyway, the United States Postal Service, you suck, and we're going to talk more about it. So stay tuned, folks, if you're into that sort of stuff. So, all right, so we're talking infrastructure right there. We're going to talk a little bit more about infrastructure, and I don't know how to sort of frame this conversation around the EV infrastructure, charging infrastructure, or the lack of. But again, I think that in the long run, I think the private sector is going to have to step up to help the government get this done. And I think that the government has to incentivize those private corporations that want to help grow the EV charging infrastructure. And you're already seeing some of that, like Shell stepping in, shutting down, they're actually converting them from gasoline to EV charging stations. And, you guys have heard Keith and I say this a ton lately, that the future is not electric, it's eclectic. And we got to stop letting our politicians make those decisions for us, what we drive. And I think that it is an individual choice. It has benefits across the board. If you are one who lives in a city, works in the same city, and it is a large city, then electric makes sense to someone. But others, a gasoline engine would make sense. And so this is only a piece of the entire puzzle that we're trying to put together to keep mobility in this country and globally intact and robust for us as consumers. And a little later in this podcast, I can't like concert. This is not a concert. I'm not a rock star. But anyway, a little later in this podcast, we'll get into some more of this, at how the mindset has changed. Yeah.
Sorry, you were saying?
A little bit later, we'll get into this and talk about why, why millennials are just not buying anymore. So anyway, so let's talk about the infrastructure of the EV charging segment of this, and why do we have such a problem in this country getting this done? What do you think?
So, number one, I think standards. I think when
Agreed.
you have, and I understand why. I understand why maybe Tesla doesn't want to agree with Ford, and Ford doesn't want to agree with GM and Tesla and so on the type of plug to plug into that EV, how much voltage it can pull, charging rates, all that stuff, right? So everybody thinks and to some extent we've seen this in technology for a long time. You know, I mean, you have kind of Apple always doing their own thing with their own connectors, and honestly, their motivation was usually monetary, which I think is happening a little bit in the charging side, meaning like that lightning cable is patented by Apple. If you make a lightning cable, Apple gets a royalty, right? If USB-C is a standard, Apple doesn't get, it's like they didn't write the song, so they don't get the writing credit on that, you know, on that.
Right.
So, you know, I think standards or lack thereof, and there are some in the works, but to date, lack of standards is probably one reason.
Yeah.
The other one is...
Well, do you think that the government has done enough to step in and say, hey, you got it? I mean, because this is a consumer issue. This is, I mean, I don't think that the government can step in and do much without the industry itself adopting those standards, like you're saying.
I'm more of a supply and demand guy, which we're going to get into in the second. Are we doing these first two together or separately, or yes to all the above?
I think it can tie in together. It doesn't matter. This is going to be one of those shows where it just kind of all flows to the end, and we got a good surprise for you at the end, guys.
So,
it's going to be nice.
Yeah. So I think here. Let me get my screen share going. So there was an article, actually, came out of Electrify News. And
yep.
If I can get my screen share to work here.
And by the way, we met Matt.
Yeah.
At Electrify Expo, who is he is heavily quoted in this and has a great
we've interviewed him.
Great app. Yep. And so you can roll over to our channel and check out that quick interview with him. He's a great guy and he knows his stuff. So I think he's a staple with Electrify now. I think he's with them on board all the time. Yeah, it seems like.
I've seen that as well. So this came from the Electrify Expo people. And, you know, essentially there's more electric vehicles on the road now than we really have the infrastructure to charge. If everybody went to charge their cars all at once, it's not going to happen. You're going to be waiting for a while. Maybe like gas lines in the 70s. But, I mean, so the answer to your question is, Jay, from my perspective, like, there's a level of risk and reward here for the private sector if the government doesn't step in. And I do feel like some state governments have taken that risk, you know, in the Rust Belt, where they've incentivized charging companies to put these charging stations. And I don't really care, like, personally, whether you are for EVs or against EVs or indifferent, it doesn't matter. The point is, this is a business, and people that do have these vehicles need to charge them. And there is there's money to be made from said charging service, just like there's money to be made from petroleum, like when you put it in your automobile, right? So,
absolutely.
I mean,
but you're right on the standardizations of this plays a big role, right? So, for example, I mean, if the example given here is like it's electric fuel, right? So standardize it so it makes it easy for someone to just pop in and get what they need and get out of here. My car needs this color charger, right? So, and Matt's app does this great. It's I think it's green, blue, and red or whatever, and you choose those locations that apply to your vehicle, right? And so it's no different than you pulling up to a gas pump and, you know, your car requires, say, minimum 89 octane or minimum 92 octane or diesel. It's labeled, it's standardized. The diesel handle is green. You know what it is, and then you have the octane ratings are listed right on the pump for what you need. For gasoline, it's easy. Anybody can refuel a vehicle, but right now, as it stands for the EV market, the standardization is playing a big role, and they are a big, huge barrier to getting the standardized. But I think you just said this a minute ago, that isn't the adoption of the Tesla plug coming into play like in 2025, like it'll be the standard plug. Is that right?
NACS is I think it's North American Charging Standard. If I'm not mistaken. And so without doing further research, it looks very, very similar to the one on Teslas today. Now, does it deliver the same voltage? Does it have the same communication ports and protocols? I don't know.
And then if they standardize it, like you got old charging plugs, you might have to have an adapter or something, or they go back and retrofit those old charging stations with the right plug, for the new standard. But for a while, they'll have to have, actually, it'll just boil down to adapters, I think, for those the earlier EVs or whatever at some point, don't you think?
I absolutely do. Yeah.
So if you were to pull into any Walmart right now, you're going to have, I think, two types of charging stations, right? Is that how they're doing it? I haven't pulled into one to see the big long. I've seen them from a distance, but I haven't noticed if is it a mix of Teslas.
I'll get back to you because I've been to enough Walmarts and I've seen them, but I haven't paid attention to what their standard is because I'm driving a diesel, motor.
That's true. Yeah.
But back to your question, J3400 is based on the Tesla plug. And it's been in Teslas since 2021.
Yeah, so Tesla wins out there, right?
Yeah, so that's part of it is now, it's becoming, everybody else conforms to Tesla's way of doing things, which rubs some people. But back to your question, a true Tesla supercharger is designed to work better when plugged into an actual Tesla than to, like, say, a Ford Mach-E with an adapter.
Right.
Okay?
Right. Yeah. Yeah, because you're going to lose, as with anything, it's like music, man, when you when you digitize it.
Right.
And you take the native file and you continue to repeat, you lose. The degradation is...
Audio degradation, that happens in videos too.
Yeah, and it can happen here too as well with how well something works, right? So
correct.
So as on a funny note though, man, I'm like, I said this earlier. So standardization, let's mark that we know is a root cause for certain aspects of success here. If the auto manufacturers do get on the same page, and it looks like that will happen, I think it's 2025, they're going to go to that plug across the board. So let's get that out of the way. Standardization comes along. Okay, now where do we put these things? Like I said, Shell has converted some of their gas stations into just EV charging stations. But I think the private sector has to play a bigger role here. And, big corporations like Walmart. And then, I laugh at, I laugh when I first thought of this. What about, the rural areas? Dude, why not put a freaking charging station at every Dollar General? They're everywhere.
Brilliant idea. And once again, here we are handing out, solving the world's problems for free. And if somebody that works for the DG organization doesn't pick this up and run with it and end up with a promotion, and you know what? Here's what you can do to thank us. Just come on the program and tell us how it all worked out, and we'll interview you and we'll retell the story. But yeah, it's brilliant, man. And you don't have to put more than one or two there.
Right, but not only that, it plays right into their business model. They only have one employee in each store. You don't even need to have an employee. You just,
Right. So, and it keeps you in the store. Like, if I know I need to charge for 15 to 20 minutes, well, Coke that I went in to buy now turns into a Coke and a moon pie and, some dishwashing detergent and, what else do I need on my grocery list? And it, drives their profit margin up because it keeps them in the store longer. And I can't imagine that the expense to put one or two of these things in is that astronomical. I mean, Dollar General's building stores, like, they're going to develop Mars eventually. Like, they're just expanding that quickly. So,
yeah. It's funny, dude, that you say that, because during the recent solar eclipse, I saw this video show up on TikTok, and it was a guy zooming into the moon. He goes, "What is that?" He kept zooming in, and there was a big Dollar General sign on the moon.
There you go, right? And their headquarters here, so maybe, we could do an in-person if they pick,
But the thing is, the biggest fear that people have is that, I live in Podunk, Oklahoma, where there's nothing. Well, there is something. There's a Dollar General, and that's where the private sector, man. I'm telling you, these corporations. Okay, and you just said, right. So the length of time that it takes to charge a vehicle, right? You're going to spend what? At least an hour.
So
at least an hour, right?
Well, I'll go 15 to 30 minutes. I think most of them will get you to about a 75% charge in nowadays, unless it's like very, very, very first. Like something made in 2017. Most of the stuff now is going to get you to 70 to 75% in somewhere between 15 and 30 minutes. Yep. The new Kias are crazy fast in their chart, So the ideal candidates are places that are destinations that have a lot of store space for you to spend time in. And Jay, and I, Chuck, who we mentioned in the beginning, and I'm just making sure he's not falling asleep yet. We're gonna get to
wake up, Chuck.
Has turned into a little bit of an archivist because he remembers when we say things, and he suggested maybe we do a show where we, go back and point out the number of times. So I know for a fact that I have mentioned numerous times on this program Buc-ee's. And Buc-ee's is expanding like crazy, and the level of insanity from that fuel, it's basically, if you've never experienced a Buc-ee's, it's otherworldly. It's insane how many people are in these things, how many people drive off the interstate to go do the pilgrimage. They're usually not in the middle of a big city. They're out in the country. They have hundreds of gas pumps. Yeah. They have a whole, general store doesn't do it justice. Like, it's got food and dessert and fresh made tacos and briskets and vending machines and grocery store.
Private bathrooms, dude.
And
inside, I mean, it's like and they have paid employees that are in there cleaning up after you when you leave.
Their car wash attendant, I've seen the now hiring car wash manager, $134,000 a year starting salary, right?
Right. Yeah.
So what I said back, and I don't know how long it's been, but these are all mostly new, and why are they not, maybe they are buying enough land and space behind the store that they could also put some charging stations, because the store model that they have literally supports keeping you in that store to buy more crap while your car is being charged.
Right.
Why a gas station in the year 2024 is building a new station and not putting some EV chargers in it is a little bit surprising, right?
Right. Well, it is, but they've actively been trying to partner up, and they have with Mercedes-Benz.
I hate to say I told you so.
Bada bing. And it's going to take partnerships like this to get them there. And that's the thing. This is some cool stuff, man. And so you take a look at, let's see, the first Mercedes Buc-ee's chargers will be installed in Texas, Florida, Alabama, and Georgia by the end of 2023. Okay. Further expansion is expected in 2024. Buc-ee's currently has, and this was in, I think, November of last year, they had 46 locations in 7 states. 24 of those locations are already home to Tesla superchargers. So there you go. They are paying attention to what's going on. And if you look at the expansion of Buc-ee's, dude, they're popping up like mushrooms, man. Right?
It's insane.
What was the little furry creature on the original series? The Tribble.
The Tribbles. Trouble with Tribbles, right?
Trouble with Tribbles, right? So here you go. These guys are popping up like Tribbles.
Now you're reminding me. So the Buc-ee's mascot, people go in there and they buy this doll, they buy these stickers. We actually tagged Buc-ee's when we did this a while back, where I told them that they should name that mascot. It's a beaver, right? You remember I told them that they needed to name it Justin. Right?
Yes,
right?
I do remember that, man. Yes. That's great. Justin Beaver. I love it, dude. I love it. Justin the Beaver.
So, Buc-ee's, the offer still stands. I mean, maybe put our little logo, on the beaver somewhere.
Feel free to come online with us and talk to us, or just, sponsor a podcast or two.
So,
we'd be glad to. I'd actually like a lifetime membership.
Yeah, right. Free vending machine refills for life. They don't sell alcohol.
For anyone that's never been into a Buc-ee's, okay, I'm sure at some point in your life in the future you will, because they're expanding that fast. If you've never been in one, I'm telling you guys, and Keith described it, what it is and what they do for you. This is like the Disney World. It's an oasis.
Yeah,
of food.
It's the biggest gas stations I've ever seen in my life.
It's a grocery mart. It's like a market style, right? It's like a Whole Foods kind of a thing, or if you want the artery clogging pig's feet, man, they got that stuff for you too.
Oh, yeah.
So they got a little bit for everything. And again, Keith, I'm tying this into this because how can we help the country? And I think the private sector has got to come in and just take control. And you're seeing some of this already happen. Now, you are correct in that regard that the infrastructure is still lacking in some ways, but the growth of these stations popping up everywhere is undeniable. They're there. And I heard someone asked me the other day how I felt about the EV segment. I said I think it's a valid segment. I think that people should have that choice to drive an EV if they want it. I think it's a reliable source of transportation in most circumstances. And you cannot deny that this is a big movement in the automotive industry.
Well, you can, and people do, but doesn't.
People do.
It's
so
delusional,
that's where
right?
That's right, and that's where this question came from. Well, what are you going to do when the power grid goes down and you can't charge it? And I say, okay, you ever heard of a diesel generator?
Yeah, well,
how do hospitals run when the power goes out?
They have generators that
diesel
run off
generators.
Petroleum-based,
or natural gas.
I mean, in the past 5 years, I can remember a couple times in Tennessee where the gas stations ran out of gas. I mean, it doesn't happen often, and most of that was panic-induced. Mm-hmm. There was no fuel short, but there were pipelines that broke and people freaked out, and they basically
hurricanes, natural disasters, all those sort of things cause. That.
It's like, and I've seen that too. I've seen the whole social media post where guys are like, "Man, you stuck in traffic on the interstate and the cars are stopped. I hope you're EV. What are you going to do when it runs out?" Well, I mean, there's people sitting in that same line that have an eighth of a tank of gas. What are they going to do?
Exactly.
In theory, the EV will go. It can idle cheaper.
It does idle cheaper.
I mean, depending on how hot or cold it is outside, but
this is true. If it's not running all the cooling systems,
but I don't know. I'm just saying. I think we're making the same point here. Why do you care? Yeah. And unless somebody is telling me what to think or do or buy, I don't care.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Variety is a great thing. Options are a good thing.
Yeah. This is so funny, man. I saw one of our competitors in the industry, in media, post on Facebook asking the question. And they're an automotive blog, right? They asked the question on a Facebook post. It says, let's remember this correctly. Oh, why is the auto industry forcing electric vehicles down our throat? and I'm like, oh, this ought to blow up. And the first thing that popped in my mind is that anybody who is truly in the automotive industry knows the answer to that. And that answer is this: the automotive industry is not forcing you to drive
Jay,
EVs.
How many of these have you done?
Right.
Yeah.
But that's the case, man. I mean,
oh, no. When you go to Ford, you have no other choice but a Mach-E. Right?
Right, man. What is up with that? Why do people like to stir
that
the pot
is
with that sort of
in
stuff?
the minority. How many?
They are.
GM offers the Cadillac Lyriq, the Chevy Volt.
Chevy Volt.
They still make the Bolt. I'm not sure.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. They do.
And then they've got a couple other plug-in options that are basically, they make multiple versions of the same vehicle. Like I think the Blazer, they're going to have an all-electric.
Yeah.
Okay. But
it's already out.
Okay. But my point is, you walk on, well, good luck finding one, right? But you walk onto any GM lot whose sales were up this quarter, by the way. Most of the options, I would venture a guess that less than 20% of the cars they have there to sell you are electric. So where does the whole forcing down throat thing, like, I don't see it. I really don't.
Yeah, I don't either. That's what rubbed me wrong. And again, they are part of the problem when, and you know who you are, guys. You know exactly who you are, and all you're doing is stirring the pot, and it's just an ignorant post, period. That's stupid. This is a robust industry, and you can produce a vehicle that runs on compressed natural gas. You can produce a vehicle that runs on diesel. You can produce an electric vehicle. You can produce a gasoline vehicle. You can produce a hydrogen fuel cell vehicle. What's your point?
I think. Well, I mean, we're all guilty of this. You have sort of your own personal beliefs, and we look for supporting arguments to support those beliefs and convince ourselves. And I don't know, that's a tough call. Like, is it because said blog, social media outlet, etc., is trying to support a certain point of view? Is it because they have sponsors in that sector? Is it because, I mean, who knows, right? All I know is we are the most objective podcast on the planet in the automotive industry right now. That I am sure of, because we will consider all sides of it. And for once, it's not my internet that's choking wind. Or is it? Is it you or me? Is it me?
I don't know. Could be. Yeah, it might be. I don't know. It could be me.
Did you pay the bill?
I paid the bill. I look good on this end.
Oh, okay. Well, then maybe it's me. Who knows?
Are you seeing a little lag or something?
Yeah.
Okay. But you look okay to me everything looks okay.
Your signal, like I have the little signal bars next to, all of our pictures, and yours is really, really low. But I digress. So, and I wonder, Jay, which this leads us into the next topic, which is Tesla sales have declined for the first time since 2020, which is a little bit surprising. But I think was inevitable. So there's lots of speculation as to why. It's not as bad as the story would lead you to believe. Inside EVs is basically saying,
Yeah, the bottom line is they still moved more units than any other manufacturer out there, right?
Yeah.
I mean, registrations are down, okay? But you got to understand, you got to peel the onion, right, so to speak. And when you get down to it, they're down, yes, but they don't have incentives. They're not getting, customers, if they buy a couple of the models, don't get the rebate.
Yeah, that's all ended, right?
Right. Yeah. So, but 2 of their models do. So, and so you got to factor that into.
Well, there's more competition now. Like,
more competition.
And, the pricing is a little bit more competitive. And I think also, I wonder, to carry through from the previous discussion point, does Elon Musk's political stances that he's been really, really vocal about lately have a factor in as the sort of the face and spokesman of Tesla?
I think so, man. I really do, and I think he has to be very careful. We live in a different time. We're post 2020 now, man. We're post COVID.
Yeah.
And before COVID, again, I keep referencing that. Everybody said it will never be like we were before COVID hit, and I think we learned a lot from that whole episode as a whole. The automotive industry damn sure did, because they were one of the biggest ones affected by the supply chain. But I do think that you are 100% spot on with the fact that you have so much competition. It's a very noisy sector of the automotive industry right now, to the tune of people are just popping up. There's a new startup it seems like every month, and one falling. We just talked about that recently, where we had potentially Fisker is out, but I saw their stock is actually coming back up a little bit. They're getting somebody's giving them some air, and so we'll see how that pans out, and we'll keep you posted on that. But it's to the point to where Elon cannot market the way he marketed his vehicles before either, Keith. I mean, before it was just kind of word of mouth, right?
Yeah, and so you get to a point of saturation where, enough people have heard that Teslas are good, and we've seen enough Teslas, and everybody sort of knows what they are, and it's not new anymore, and word of mouth isn't enough, and
right.
So that's going to be a factor. They're doing layoffs. Reuters picked up on an internal memo that said Tesla is laying off 10% globally. I don't really feel like this is anything unusual. He does this. They do this all the time. They've done it several cycles.
But so does every manufacturer.
Yeah,
too.
This is his business model.
Right.
He goes through and trims the fat. I mean, look, when he bought Twitter, he went in and just cleaned house. Like, he is all about efficiency and basically cutting the overhead and running a lean company. So I don't know that the layoffs are directly related to sales, if that makes sense.
Yeah, they may or may not be. But when you look at the numbers, though, Keith, their units were still pretty high. I don't think that and they're not the only manufacturer of electric vehicles where the registrations were down. I mean, they've all lost in the first quarter of the year, and we talked about this on the last podcast about how bloated the damn inventories are, and they're just sitting on the lots. Which all this is going to kind of, I think that they were betting on the come, and when I say that, I think that they were looking at the demographic that they were trying to target, and guess what? That demographic is not buying cars, So, and we'll get into that here in a minute, but
like the Model 3, the smaller, less expensive models, lower cost models,
right.
Stuff like that, right?
Yeah, and you look at the price tag on some of these. I mean, where did I read? It was a $300,000 electric vehicle. Of course, it was a VIP car. I forget who it was.
But that's
you're talking. But BMW, Mercedes, their EVs they're well over 100,000. Porsche, same way.
Well, you can buy a Model 3 for 300,000 too. It just has to have the Ruin sticker on it. Right. There you go. Shout out to those guys. If you guys don't know what we're talking about, the Ruin crew is kind of notorious for taking Teslas and just building them out like insane builds.
Yeah. Go check them out. And they're at every Electrify Expo. Give some love to AJ and CJ. So, yeah, I'm in agreement with you to kind of finalize this a little bit here and move on to some other stuff. But I think that Elon is basically looking at the bigger picture and going, okay, we need to trim a little fat here if we're going to.
Yeah.
It's just business, man. It's how it works, okay? I would say to anybody out there that Tesla is not falling off the radar as a big supplier of electric vehicles in this country. In fact, they're about to move into other markets. I think India, they're really, really making a push. You want to talk about a population that will drive EVs? They are that. And look, if those guys can have an EV infrastructure, charging infrastructure, I think we can in this country as well, guys. It needs to.
But Jay, EVs are going away.
Yeah, mm-hmm.
They are. I got it's right here. I got it right here.
Okay.
It's in the news. It's in the news. It must be true.
Live.
You want to see what I'm talking about? I got it right here. EVs are going away. BMW's not going to do them anymore.
Oh, is that right?
It's true. It's true. Look. This comes from cleanindustries.com. BMW says goodbye to electric cars. Hydrogen engines begins a new era. This is a couple months old, but according to a report from Information Trends, hydrogen engines are likely to become the future of automobile transportations. EVs have been the primary focus for now. I'm adding that part in.
That's exactly right. Now, hydrogen.
Yeah,
man.
BMW is working on it. Everybody's working on it. But see, this is what I hate about this is clickbait. And
it is.
There's a guy that happens to be a content creator in the automotive sector that does this kind of crap, and it drives us crazy.
It does.
Why people, I don't understand how people can watch one of his videos in its 20-minute entirety with a title like So Long Toyota or Rest in Peace, Honda.
Right.
And then come away and not be pissed off at that guy for lying to them. I don't get it. Right. And they come back for the next video. I don't know. Maybe we just need to start lying to people, right?
Yeah, we won't do that.
But
I don't think we can.
BMW is not going to start. They are not saying goodbye to electric cars. They are not going to stop making electric cars this year or next year or the year after that.
Nope.
And yes.
What are they becoming? They're becoming more eclectic.
Yes.
We have been saying this all along, and this is every single manufacturer are going to have points and turns in this process to where their focus is going to shift a little bit because they're moving the goalpost all the time. So you have to work with what the industry is or the consumer's demand is.
Yeah.
And or what our, and every segment of the globe is different in many ways, shapes, and forms. You've got parts of the world that they've got it together and they're very heavy on electric vehicles, where you have parts of the world that typically run on diesel. They're running everything diesel.
It depends. Okay, so here is the key, right?
Yep.
Different fuel sources have different strengths and different weaknesses. Okay,
right.
If I want to run in something that's capable of towing an RV, I'm probably not going to do that in an electric pickup truck unless it's a tiny, tiny RV. Okay?
Right.
If I want to run something that's efficient, easy to use, gets me from A to B, it's quiet, it's comfortable, I don't do more than 100 miles a day, I want to keep the cost of maintenance down, okay, that's an electric vehicle.
Right.
What they are actually talking about in this article is something that a lot of the manufacturers are doing, which is using hydrogen in certain applications, maybe over the road. It's better to produce it's got a basically, I'm looking for the right word here, but it's that stable, constant power that it produces. What you're not going to get out of it is the torque and off-the-line speed that you would get in an electric. And what they even go into that here in this article. They're like, well, the BMW iX5 that they're working on that's a hybrid with hydrogen also has it has electric assist. Where did I see that in this article? So it's not. How can you say that electric's going away and in the same article you're down here talking about it's a hybrid electric hydrogen? You guys, whoever wrote this, you get an F. You get an F. Don't go home and quit your job. You
fuel cell electric is what they're talking about. That's different from a hydrogen internal combustion engine. You're still producing electricity through a fuel cell. Yeah, it's electric. It's another way to get electric, right? So, but you can run an internal combustion engine on hydrogen, but it doesn't make it 100% clean. It's still putting out emissions and NOx, whereas the fuel cell electric, it just the byproduct of that is just it's water.
Yeah, which is nice.
That's it, right? But if it is an internal combustion engine, and what makes that so different, it has to be so. They have to force so much air into those things. The air to fuel ratio has to be. It's so much greater than a gasoline engine, and they just haven't cracked that nut yet. As far as that, they have, but it's too costly, man. And at the end of the day, man, the consumer has the right to choose what they want to drive. So I agree with you 100% here, Keith. And I grabbed this article to read it, and when I started reading, I'm like, this is totally not what the title is all about. And the bottom line is what I wanted to bring up was BMW, like every other manufacturer out there. We just talked about this about Toyota. Toyota backing off battery electric vehicles and mainly focusing on hybrid. But it's still, at some point, there's electric going to be involved in this stuff in some way, shape, or form. All of these versions of these vehicles that we're talking about, they are stepping stones to eventually becoming an all-electric society at some point. But we are a long, long way from that because we're so reliant upon fossil fuels for everything. For one, they're reliable in certain instances. I've said it before. They have a purpose. So to come out and make a bold statement and say that we're banning the internal combustion engine, that is the stupidest thing. And Gavin Newsom in California, man, putting that mandate out about they can't sell gasoline engines anymore in California, I think by the year 2030 or 35. I mean, it's like, are you kidding me, dude? You can't run as it is, and you're going to take that away? Oof. I feel so sorry for no wonder people started leaving in droves, man. That's my opinion on that one. But hydrogen is a good source, a good alternative to get to where we're trying to get to. And so I commend BMW for playing around with that. But while still keeping their lineup of gasoline engines, as well as, what is it, the I series? They got like 5 of them.
Yeah.
That are
and
electric
and
versions.
they're great.
They're great automobiles, man. They really are. I mean, so I think with you, man, when I'm listening to you extract from this story, you're more pissed at the article than you are the substance of the article.
You guys, you don't know the number of times that Jay and I have conversations on the side throughout our days where we're like, just basically get a load of this. Like, it's just so ridiculous, and
yeah.
And then it's usually like, can you believe this? Can you believe the kind of what, and they got away with it. And, and it's just when I see that stuff, I get a little rubbed.
Well, look, we have, and I think, Keith, you feel the same way that I do here. I'll speak for you on
That's
this.
fine.
Is that we have a responsibility, I think, to our listeners to give them our opinion, but we deal in the world of facts, right? So it's our job to sometimes go and pick on some of these blogs.
Are you suggesting
writers,
that the guru could potentially mean that we actually know what we're talking about, and it wasn't just a random choice?
It may certainly have a factor in that.
I mean,
so.
it's kind of.
But again,
yeah.
It is our responsibility to bring you guys this news and stuff. But if we see something and we don't agree with it, we're going to bring that up too, and to kind of prove the point that, hey, don't believe everything you read, or hey, let me just. How about just read?
Where's my the more you know drop? Like, you get Jay
Right.
on the cover of one of those library posters in 5th grade, and he's like, read.
that is the problem we have
with
today,
the tech
like
article,
on social media.
it's got like how to fix
Yeah.
how to fix a fuel pump. Step 1, read.
Right. Yeah, definitely read that. Don't miss that.
Yeah.
But
Jay,
but that is the truth. I mean,
how many of those have
what?
you done? Anyway, I digress.
Anyway, that's the problem we have, is that same way on social media, people just don't read. They look at a
If it's a meme, it must be true.
right. Yes.
Right.
Have we really become
Yes,
that?
I think so.
in
I
society?
really do.
Are we really that bad,
Yeah.
man?
I think so.
Gosh, man. Thank God for movies like
Did you guys?
Unfrosted
Yeah.
coming out.
Did you guys didn't know this? The latest meme is, if you don't go to our Amazon store and click on the link to buy your Amazon stuff, your computer's going to crash. So I'm just saying. That's a meme.
Mm-hmm.
You heard it here. We'll
right.
we'll post it, on socials to make it true.
Right. Yeah. Anyway, there's some good stuff coming out. That Unfrosted with Seinfeld.
Yeah.
In it, I can't wait to. It's I think May the 3rd is when it drops on Netflix.
Gives me something to watch other than the Fall Guy movie.
Yeah. Right. And I'll tell you something else I'm gonna watch. I haven't watched yet, which is Greyhound on Apple TV Plus with Tom Hanks.
You won't
Have
be
you seen it?
disappointed. Yeah.
Right. I know I won't be disappointed, man, because it's. I mean, we just finished watching about the World War II fighters or the pilots.
Oh, I know the one you're talking about. Yeah.
It was on Apple as well. That was a Steven Spielberg, Tom Hanks production, and so anything those guys touch is just fantastic when it comes to this sort of stuff. I absolutely love it. But speaking of movies and famous movies, which is
hold up before you get there, I wanted to just point out one more thing, because I know where you're going, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, but
it's okay.
Just
we do
to close the loop on this whole EV conversation.
Okay.
Do you think that the hydrogen options that are going to come in at an affordable price point on the consumer level?
No. I think that where hydrogen is going to be more effective is going to be at the commercial level, where they are for long haul vehicles, stuff like that. I think that's what's going to work. I don't think that they can bring that. I don't think they can bring the cost of that vehicle. I mean, you got a lot of things in play.
Now
there.
let
me
mess with that theory just a little bit. Let me see if I can poke some holes in it. Okay.
Okay. Go ahead.
Let's say that it's okay. I pointed out earlier in the program, I probably wouldn't buy an electric vehicle to tow, like if I had some heavy, like an RV or something like that, right? Yeah. So Cybertrucks and Hummer EVs are $100K plus typically, right?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
What if you produce a hydrogen, like 3/4 ton truck that essentially, because diesel is $4 to $5 a gallon in most of the country at least, and probably there where you are on the left side of the country.
Oh, definitely.
It's probably over $5 a gallon, right?
It is. It's right in line with premium gas.
So
premium unleaded,
if I'm Toyota or anybody, and I produce
Hyundai,
yep, and I produce
Nikola.
BMW, although BMW doesn't do
BMW,
pickup
right.
trucks here. And I've got $110,000 to $120,000 starting cost 3/4 ton truck that runs on hydrogen, and my cost of maintenance and operation is 20% of that of a diesel engine.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with that. I mean, that's what I say from the commercial side. I think that's where that would work heavily. I don't know about. I mean, that's just like EVs. I mean, the cost of the EVs, if people will, if it's in line with the cost of an EV, an all electric vehicle.
But it can't be like Model 3. It can't be low end like a Chevy Volt. Like that's not going to happen probably in hydrogen right away. It's going to be top end, right? Like Cybertruck type stuff, right? Like And the other factor that we might as well go ahead and just mention now that we're talking about it is the millennials are basically not buying cars at a rate. I mean, the average automobile, I heard this yesterday on a newscast, is like $50,000. Like very close to that for a new car in the U.S. GM's average sale price or something. So no wonder millennials are not buying cars. Right? Why? Dude, we've pointed out earlier in the show, you can after 2020, more people are working remotely. You don't need a car. If I leave my house 2 or 3 times a week to stop playing Fortnite, and go, I don't even have to go to the grocery store, right? Like I can take a Lyft. What is at a $50,000 note? I don't even know what that costs, per month. Like, let's just say $1,000, right? On a 5-year note. Like, wouldn't it? I could do a whole lot of rideshare a month and still not get to $1,000.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. I agree with that. I said this, and my oldest son.
Yeah.
I remember when COVID hit. I mean, he says to me, he goes, "I was built for this, man."
Yeah.
Totally okay being stuck at home and ordering online.
The two guys that basically figured out before we had all the software tools to do it, how to do a podcast while not being in the same room.
Right. Way before anybody else.
I was basically, we were drilling holes with hand drills before we had the power tools.
Yeah. This is
uphill,
true.
Both ways, in the snow.
In the snow, yeah. Absolutely.
So one other thing to point out here, and we got some of that data from Electrify News, the Electrify Expo people. Jay, you see this picture right here?
I do.
Do you guys know we have a YouTube channel? It's youtube.com/Parts Counter Gurus. If you think that picture's good, you should see what we can do on our YouTube channel, where you'll get a moving version of that same picture.
That's right.
Isn't that cool? Everybody?
You are the man.
Here's camera 1. That's them. And that's us. Right?
Nice movie, man.
Thanks. I didn't shoot it. That was
I'm digging it.
Anyway, the point of their article was they used Turo and Ledger, some car ownership data, and they pointed to millennials not buying as many millennials buying new cars, I should say.
Right, and Turo is a great option.
Yeah,
it's an option to offset costs.
I've used it to do reviews.
Yeah, and you know what? I think that sort of stuff. It's funny, because whenever I read this thing, I thought, man, maybe the millennials are actually pretty damn smart.
I wouldn't go that far.
Well, I mean, I'm just saying.
We need to get to the end. If you say that, you're going to lose Chuck.
But how many people buy a vehicle and a month into it, they're like, God, I just, buyer's remorse because it wasn't,
right.
They didn't drive it enough. They didn't test drive enough. Turo is a great way to just go test drive something that you might be thinking about buying, man, at an affordable cost. I mean, what was it? I don't know. I rented a Nissan Murano, man, on the last trip. And then the trip before that, I rented the new Tacoma, the next generation Tacoma. Fantastic drives for both of them. And I gave a solid thumbs up on one of them.
Yeah. I bet I know which one. Yeah. So,
yeah. you know.
Yeah. So, okay, sorry. I pulled you off track for 3 or 4 minutes. You were excited. Sorry.
I was, but you did because you were pulling me back in the script. See, I got you.
Well, sometimes it's okay to go off script. You know, I wanted the hydrogen thing. See, this is what happens is people don't, they go, well, man, that'll never work. But if you objectively look at, like, we didn't say hydrogen is coming and it's going to be like the next Honda Civic. At least not yet, right? So you got to objectively let this play out. It'll take a couple generations of automobile generations, I should say.
Right.
Just like it's happening with the EVs, like we started this podcast with, you know, now they're standardizing on charging, and it takes time, everybody. You got to be patient here.
Right. Absolutely. From one movie to another.
Okay. If you insist.
Yep. This is your favorite thing, man, in the whole wide world.
Best.
You just absolutely love Back to the Future.
Jay,
but more
without
so
a doubt, it is the best time travel documentary ever made.
I can't disagree with you on that. I think it's fantastic, man.
So
it's fantastic.
So, well, and just when we think we're done talking about them, it's like this year's Tesla. So we've met some of the people.
I learned, by the way, sorry to interrupt, but I learned a lot about John DeLorean in this article.
I did too. And I've watched, there's several documentaries on Netflix. I've watched and read stuff for years, and I still didn't know everything that there were things in here. So what Jay's talking about is, was it the last podcast or the podcast before where we had just reported on
both, because it was the lawsuit, the impending lawsuit.
Yep.
And then the resolution to that between DeLorean and NBC.
Yeah, Universal.
Right. Over the naming and or using the likeness of and profiting off of that from an old agreement. And ended up NBC Universal did the right thing, which is a no-brainer. We said that both win.
Yeah.
So there you go. Now this is the next chapter, which it blew my mind when you texted this to me, and I'm not gonna bleep, whatever you said. I'm not gonna say what you said, and I'm like, okay, this has got to have some juice in it, man. So I immediately started reading it, and I'm like, holy cow! And it's a really good read.
Long
to the fact. Yes, it is, man. It took me a long time to get through it, to the point to where we might plug a link into this specific story if you guys want to read it and get into the depths of it. But it is one of the most interesting chapters in the DeLorean story.
Yeah.
By far, to me.
So, quick history lesson for those of you that aren't as up on the whole DeLorean history as maybe we are, is John DeLorean started with, I don't know if he started with General Motors, but he kind of was
with them
at a very high point in his career with General Motors.
You could thank him for the Vega.
Yeah, well, but also like he basically started that whole
Pontiac
muscle car movement of dropping huge engines and
absolutely, man.
And so he left, of course, and started his own car company, which we now everybody knows if you've seen Back to the Future, that DeLorean, which is referred to as the DMC-12, but never the DMC-12 badge ever showed up on any of those cars. And John, so there was a big legal, he got in legal trouble for smuggling drugs in the cars, and there's just an interesting story that in and of itself. He was quite the personality.
He was actually later acquitted.
He was, yes.
So,
but sold the rights to a company out of Texas called DeLorean Motor Company. And to this day, and we've interviewed these guys at SEMA and had conversations with them, they will do several things. If you own a current DeLorean, like the DMC-12, you can get it serviced. They also will sell you a factory upgrade package where it kind of modernizes the vehicle. And it's really sharp. Check out our YouTube channel from the SEMA segment, and you can see it. Like we did a walkthrough with it. But the other thing is that, of course, came out with the Alpha, which was their kind of current model DeLorean.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
right.
And
Ital Design, I think, is the one that came up with the design.
Yeah. I think that might be. Yeah. So John DeLorean has a daughter. She's still around. Kat. She goes by Kat. I think her name is Catherine. But
that's it.
Basically, Catherine, for a very long time, and I can understand why, tried to distance herself from the whole DeLorean franchise because, as she put it, like, why would you want the reminder of a horrible, like, she had a traumatic childhood because she watched her dad go through all of this, and she didn't want that reminder parked in her driveway, right?
Exactly. Now, one thing to factor in here that you guys need to know, a little background on her. Okay, so John and her mother, they ended up divorcing, and she was asked who she wanted to live with and decided to live with her dad at a very young age. And so she basically grew up around her dad and cars, and she just has a love for cars. But also, like, to touch on what Keith was just saying, she also lived through that whole thing with the failure of the company and the bad media that surrounded that. So as a child, that's pretty traumatic. So again, one of the reasons why she distanced herself. So carry on, sir.
No, all good. So she reminds me a little bit of, I think it's Abigail Disney, one of the nieces of Walt Disney that has always been very vocal of the Disney company about, that she's not happy with how they run the company. So Kat is not a fan of the current DeLorean Alpha. She is not a fan of the company. Nope. She has said it without mincing words on social media, basically that this was completely opposite of what her dad wanted, and she does not agree with how the current owners of the DeLorean brand are running the company. And she thinks the Alpha's ugly and all that. So what's interesting is that a guy designed, basically sketched out before the Alpha was revealed. His name was Angel Guerrera. Sketched out
also Italian.
Yeah. Sketched out what a current modern version of the DeLorean could look like, and she loved it. And somehow it circulated to her, and she's put this plan in motion to try to make it a reality. Now, she has an engineering background and wants to develop engineering academies, if you will, around the country, and wants to use to incorporate this new car into that vision. And this is a big undertaking. I mean, it remains to be seen whether she can pull it off or not. But the big issue at hand, of course, is she does not own her own name, meaning she doesn't own DeLorean motor cars. She doesn't own the DeLorean car name.
Exactly.
So if you release a DeLorean and you are the daughter of John DeLorean and you want it to look like a DeLorean and you want everyone to know it's from the DeLorean heritage, how do you do that, right?
Right.
And they get into that a little bit in this article, which comes from Wired. This is one of the best articles I've seen written about anything in the automotive sector in months. So good job, Wired, whoever wrote this. And it's so much so that, Jay, I know it'll never happen, but I started thinking, man, if there was another Back to the Future movie, I don't want that to happen, but I'm just saying this new car in that movie would be holy cow.
Yeah, I like its design much better than the Alpha 5.
Yeah.
And what is she? So first of all, let's make note for our listeners that DeLorean Motor Company, as we know them now, that entity sent her a cease and desist because they caught wind of her doing that using her own name. So she has to get around it in a way. I personally think that something's going to come of this. How soon and when, I don't know. But talk a little bit about how she's had to structure this and put it out there for people legally. She still uses the DeLorean name because she is a DeLorean. I think as a DeLorean, if that's your name, you have the right to use that in your company name.
She's very carefully trying to step around it. So JZD, which is her dad's initials, was the model of this current design that she's showcasing.
Right.
And let's see. In 2022, she posted a screenshot from her dad's final automotive business plan. So this was, he died in, I think it was 2005, but was working on, at the time of his death, was working on bringing, I guess we would say bringing back, or starting another DeLorean car company.
Right.
And he wanted it to shake the automotive world, which would be believable from a guy like that. He's done it before, right? He wanted it to be an affordable car. And so she's trying to carry that forward.
Right.
What, Jay, I'm trying to find it in this article, but
the name,
what is it?
Okay, so just like Star Trek, how do you How do you keep the connectivity but twist it a little bit? You want to keep the fan, but with the Star Trek series, that was all legal. She had to do this because from a legal standpoint, it's the only way she could do it. But it's called DeLorean Next Generation. So, and then like you said, JZD is the model. Now, the way I read, they're actually using the Corvette C8 platform, working with that to come up with this design. And I don't know how that relationship works between her and someone. So obviously you can prototype anything. You can borrow and use from anyone, but to go into production, that's where the hurdles come in. So I don't know what ultimately the what's underneath this thing, what it will ultimately be. What I see looks good.
That is a good looking car.
I know.
If that thing gets made like that.
Yep. And noticeably, what's not there? The famous doors.
But they said earlier they would include them. Maybe on that design they didn't. They didn't include the gull wing doors. But I don't see how she doesn't keep that in because it's synonymous with the original DMC-12, right?
Actually, I'm looking at another picture, another angle of it. It does look like
I can see him here in this first, like you can see on the roof.
Yeah.
It just may be that he didn't put the lines.
That rendering, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I see that now. So, and at first,
that's the alpha.
Honestly, man,
that's the version that DeLorean Motor Company made right there on the screen. That's not the same.
Yeah, and no, it's not. But oddly enough, though, if you look at the design, there is some similarities. With the louvered back.
Well, sure, but the original had that too. I mean, you gotta,
But I'm talking about just the ass end of it looks, really thick back there. Yeah. It's really stout. That rendering of that particular image right there that we're looking at, I see a Corvette in there.
Yeah.
But, I don't know. I think you see that in just about every manufacturer that's out there. You're going to notice certain characteristics in design that are similar to other models out there that are of another manufacturer. And I've been saying this for a long time, that the M Series Beamers, the new ones, if you look at the profile of those things, man, it looks like they stole the design from Ford Mustang, the late model Mustangs, as well as the Jags. All three of those vehicles, to me, have some similarities in way, in a way that it looks like they're borrowing certain things, and that just happens. That's just how it works. So anyway, I don't know what to think of this, other than I was really impressed with the article and the detail they got into about some of the legal battles the challenges she has right now, which is there was supposedly a stepmother that got some proceeds from his death that Kat did not get. And it's questionable as to whether or not they were actually even married. So I think she's looking deeper into that. They touched on that as well. It's a very interesting story.
There's always that drama. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I think at this point, we've come long enough. I know there's been some documentaries on John, and his failures, his life, his failures, etc. But dadgum, man, I think that they could make a documentary about bringing the DeLorean back alone, just period. What has happened since, it died, and then Back to the Future series brought the thing new fame.
Well, Jay, I've always wanted to do a documentary.
Well, there you go. Are you game for it? You want to reach out to Kat and her team and let's see if we can get you in there?
Yeah.
But I think that it's worthy of a story in itself. It's like, the reinvention of DeLorean, man. Bringing it back from the dead. I mean, yes, we know what the movie series did for that car from a notoriety standpoint, and put it in pop culture to a degree that I can't even imagine the revenue that just the car alone being in the movie brought him, let alone just the movie.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so that's why this sort of stuff is a big deal, and that's why current DeLorean, the owner of DeLorean Motor Company, and Kat is having the issues that they're having.
That original DeLorean was very innovative, but it was far from perfect. And I don't want to give the wrong idea to anybody that hasn't heard me talk about it before. I don't think it was an amazing sports car. It's kind of a dog.
It was just, It was. I mean, it had a Peugeot engine in it. It was horrible, very underpowered, problematic. It didn't have paint on it. People think that was intended. You know why it didn't have paint on it? It's because he couldn't have. It's a costly addition to the process, so he didn't paint it. I think he would have probably rather have had it painted.
Yeah,
but they had to cut costs.
But it was so iconic in so many other ways, that
absolutely
that all sort of made up for it. Look, there are very few cars that you can drive today that are 30 and 40 years old that you pull up, and if it's just in anything close to the condition that it was in when it was made, you're going to turn heads. It's going to be a conversation piece, and everybody's going to want one, or they're going to want to get in it or look in it or ride in it.
Exactly.
And that, to me, is all you need to know about if that car is worth being, owned or not, right?
Exactly. So what else you want to add to that?
Man, that's it for, I think. Oh, right. So, Jay, for those of you, okay. So 2 things, everybody. We're over on YouTube on the video podcast side. You can watch. Did you know that you can watch this podcast on our YouTube channel? There is a podcast tab, ironically, and that's where it lives. Or you can go to probably the easiest way is to go to our website at partscounterguru.com and get the audio links for all the different audio feeds, meaning Spotify, Apple, YouTube Music now, which is the audio version of the podcast, Stitcher, you name it, we're on them.
Essentially, wherever you get your podcast, you're gonna find us.
And subscribe. That was the other thing. Yep. So Jay's shirt, as a reminder, says subscribe to my channel. It doesn't have the QR code so that you can find the channel, which means if you see this shirt on Jay and he's passed out drunk, you're not going to know which podcast to subscribe to. You'll have to either wake him up or figure that out. But I'm just making fun of you.
Or you can just well, I was going to say, should I tattoo one on my ass? Just in case that
I don't
happens.
know. It might. I don't know. We'd probably change our rating on the show. But
okay. Well,
yeah.
all right.
So please subscribe and thank you to those of you that have, and to those of you that make us a regular part of your lives. We appreciate that very, very much. We're having a good time doing this. So if we're good to go, I mentioned at the beginning of the show. Anything you need to add, Jay, before I roll on?
I don't think so, Keith. I just, just follow us on our socials. Please go over and follow us. Please just subscribe to whatever we're doing out there. And don't forget that helps us out tremendously. And don't forget, if you are in the mood to buy something that is related to the automotive industry, we got some great brand partners out there. Go to our website at partscounterguru.com. Anything helps.
And Jay's working on some more too. So there's hopefully going to be some camping gear discounts and stuff like that coming soon.
Yeah. Yep.
Hope so. Ironically, we started the show. We were talking about our friend Chuck, who had a fall while skiing and did some damage and broke more than he thought he broke at the time, and so now he's been going through physical therapy and rehab and all that. And ironically, I found this quote before I found out that happened. So Chuck, I don't want you to think that I care so much that I went out and found this just for you, but I care just enough that I put the two together. So for those of you, and this is true for all of us, but any of you guys that are having a tough time going through things, especially physically, if you're tired, if you just can't get through the day, if you're just trying to push to that next goal, whatever it is from a health perspective, this would probably apply to Dennis as well. A guy by the name of Mark Allen, I don't know Mark, but this is his quote, said, "You can keep going and your legs might hurt for a week, or you can quit and your mind will hurt for a lifetime."
Very good.
So
Wise.
With that, for my pal Jay over there, pointed the wrong direction. He's over there. I'm Keith. Thank you guys for watching and listening, and we will see you on the next one.